Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I actually want to talk to you about research topics for graduate students in business. As part of my Monday Right series, I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and this is pretty useful for anybody that is doing a research that's looking for some sort of research topic. Maybe they're even in an undergraduate program where they have to do a little bit of research or something along that lines, but it's really applicable for those that are in a business school. I do have some videos on looking for research topics, but it's going to be a little bit more general in those particular videos. This one's specifically for people that are in a business school, and it might be somebody that is doing maybe an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, and doing some sort of research topic. Maybe it's a sort of short thing, a research thing. And it's going to be probably really applicable for anybody that is interested in doing a sort of doctoral work, and they're sort of digging down into this doctoral work as much as they possibly can. So first of all, with any sort of idea that we come up with as a researcher or, somebody that is sort of investigating something, you will always not really know what you're doing until you start digging into it. It's a really iterative process. You have to dig really deep into this particular phenomenon, and it's not until after you're done looking at the phenomenon that you can actually tell other people what you are doing. That's really kind of common, and that's kind of part of the process. But what you want to do, and here's some sort of tips that you can look at in terms of getting better research topics going forward and thinking about it. So the first one is I would actually go and look at some sort of contradictions, and this is really kind of normal in strategy. This is done a lot. We sort of think about things in terms of what's called a 2x2 matrix, where we're looking at, high and low levels of something. It might sort of flip the relationship around that we would normally think about. So on one side, it might be this sort of relationship. On another side, it might be sort of this relationship. And what you're just looking at is what's called a moderating relationship that sort of tips this contradiction from one thing over to the next. And it's really kind of a common idea that we sort of look at in strategy. You might sort of think about, for example, you might be told that you should adapt. Firms should adapt to an environment very quickly, but there's often a lot of cases where you might not want to do that. And there is a whole literature on that if you want to look at sort of the stuff that Jim March does. And there's a couple of people that are doing sort of exploration stuff. I've written a paper. I have a working paper on it, but you can look at all sorts of stuff in that area. The other thing that you can do, particularly when you might be starting out, but this doesn't really necessarily mean you just have to do it when you're starting out, but you could do it all throughout the research process. Just ask managers what they think. Often the key, what you're going to find out with this particular topic, and there's a huge history of this actually working, and this is in fact won people the Nobel Prize, right? Richard Thaler, for example, where you just simply ask managers what they do or how they actually do their normal day-to-day life, and then we just simply see, okay, well, the research says this is what managers should be doing, or this is what we're telling managers to do, but then they're actually doing this, right? So if that's the case, if you look at how they're normally doing things, or if they're not doing what we're teaching, there must be a reason behind that, right? You have to look at, well, why is that happening? You have to sort of either maybe work incorrect, right? So the current theories are incorrect, or managers are doing something that they're a little bit smarter than we know. And that is a moment where you can actually reveal a lot of insight that nobody else is going to understand and nobody else is going to do, right? So managers are really cool. In the sense that so there's this thing that happens when I talk to managers, is that they have the way that they do it because they're really context specific, and they understand how they're supposed to do it in their particular context. But then there's literature over here that says this is the way that you should do it. And whenever there's that kind of misalignment, it's like, I'm onto something, or we're onto something here that's kind of interesting. The third thing that you can possibly do, and this is actually really fun, and this is an excuse for you to sit at home and watch TV or read books, just veg out. And I find it's pretty useful in the sense that in the sense that it's very generative in a lot of ways. So what I would recommend for you to do is just read some science fiction, or watch some science fiction and listen to comedians. So this is kind of a counterintuitive thing. These two folks, right? So why I'm suggesting you to do this is kind of counterintuitive. Nobody's ever going to tell you that in graduate school, to sit down and watch some TV, or, read some books or read some joke books or whatnot. But what I'm trying to get you to do is that, science fiction writers, they sort of forecast the future. They understand trends very well within a particular phenomenon, and they can forecast the future. The other thing that the comedians do is they are very good at sort of explaining what current things are happening in the environment. They're kind of, what they do is parody the current things that are happening in the environment, and they pick up on these general trends or these kind of awkward trends. Usually it's like some sort of social norms, right? Often it's maybe having to do with gender or something like that, where they're like, there's this thing that's happening in this particular phenomenon. And it is really curious. And that's all they're saying. That's most comedians, that's all they say is like, oh, this is really curious. Why do we do that? And then it makes us kind of giddy and kind of makes us kind of, you think about it, right? Like, oh, that's really strange. Right? Louis C.K. is a really good one that does that kind of stuff. Jim Gaffigan is another one that does that kind of stuff. And there's a whole host of other people that do this kind of stuff, right? They're just kind of really quirky, and you could look for those things as insight of like, okay, well, we think the world is doing this, and how come we are not doing this, right? And they're just kind of pointing that out in a humorous sense. Most comedians are extremely bright. They're very, very thoughtful. And if you pick up on that kind of stuff, then you can borrow some of that and come up with some sort of insight for a research paper, right? It's kind of fun to be able to do that. And the last thing that you can do in, if you're a graduate student in a college business and you're looking for research topics, and I've done this a lot. In fact, a lot of my research is kind of in this area. Just look for major breakdowns that happen in sort of organizations or in the world around you, right? So why is this one thing broken, and what can we do to fix it? Or what led to us to have this thing that's broken, right? So you might look at things like financial fraud, right? Enron, really interesting context. Lots of people have done research on that area. Financial crisis is, right? The 2008, 2009 financial crisis. Why did it happen? What was the implications of it? Now, a lot of people use that as a particular sort of moment in time. There was like pre and post the financial crisis, right? You can use that as kind of like, oh, well, what's this all about? There's all kinds of moments like that. Disasters, for example. Really interesting stuff in terms of insight that happens from disasters. It's not at all what you're thinking. In fact, it's probably most influential stuff that has come in terms of regulatory stuff that we know, right? So if you think of the Challenger disaster, any airline disasters that are out there, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Association, I think, administration, that's what it is. So they actually, they learn a lot from what's going on from these particular accidents that happen. They borrow and learn from that kind of stuff so you can understand what's going on there, right? They're really interesting phenomenons that you can look at in terms of these breakdowns. So that's what I would look for. These contradictions, that's going to get you as some sort of moderator what's going on, right? So that's kind of like a third variable that's going to suggest what's happening, what's going on, or it's going to suggest under these conditions it holds, but under these conditions it doesn't hold. You can also ask managers, and you look for sort of these moments of where the stuff that we understand doesn't hold up with what managers are doing. Read science fiction, listen to comedians, and then look for major breakdowns. There's some really specific things that you can get into, and there is a lot of stuff there, and it's endless once you start looking at these kind of things and listening to these kind of things. So that's all I'm going to talk about in this particular video. Make sure you give me a thumbs up if you like this. I'll do a lot more, and do subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it. And again, this is all part of my reciprocity project. The E is written with a 3, and I'm trying to do some really cool things with with this particular platform. It's a sharing economy proofreading platform. And, I want to help out graduate students as much as I possibly can, because I've been there before. So this is my way of helping out and sort of creating something that is much bigger than all of us in combined. So make sure you tell other people about it. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.